The entire restaurant fell silent when Dante Moretti walked through the doors of La Stella. Even the clinking of silverware stopped. Everyone knew who he was, the most feared Mafia boss in Chicago, the man who hadn't smiled since his daughter died 7 years ago. His reputation was carved in ice and blood. But that night, something impossible happened. Emma Sullivan, the new waitress working her third shift, did something no one had dared to do in 7 years. And when Dante's expression changed, every person in that room held their breath, unable to believe what they were seeing. What could a struggling single mother possibly do to crack the frozen heart of Chicago's most dangerous man? If you want to discover how this story began and what happened after this incredible moment, subscribe to the channel and leave a comment telling us where you're watching from. Every view helps bring more stories like this one to life. Emma's hands trembled as she tied the apron strings behind her back. This was her third job, and she needed every single one of them. Her 6-year-old son, Lucas, had medical bills that kept piling up, and the rent was 2 weeks overdue. La Stella wasn't just any restaurant. It was the most exclusive Italian establishment in Chicago, the kind of place where a single bottle of wine cost more than her monthly salary. "Listen carefully," whispered Maria, the veteran waitress who was training her. "Table 7 in the back corner. That's Mr. Moretti's table. If he comes in tonight, which he does every Thursday, you don't approach unless called. You don't make eye contact. You don't speak unless spoken to. Understood?" Emma nodded, her stomach twisting. She'd heard the stories. Everyone in Chicago had. Dante Moretti was the ghost who ran the city from the shadows. 7 years ago, his 5-year-old daughter had died in a car accident meant for him. Since that day, no one had seen him smile. Not once. The evening rush started, and Emma lost herself in the rhythm of taking orders, balancing plates, and navigating the maze of tables. She was good at this, making people feel seen, remembered. It was the one thing poverty hadn't stolen from her. At 9 p.m., the temperature in the room dropped. Dante Moretti entered flanked by 4 men in dark suits. He was younger than Emma expected, maybe 35, but his eyes were ancient. Cold gray eyes that had seen too much death. His tailored black suit probably cost more than her car. A script tattoo crawled up his neck, and his dark hair was perfectly styled. He was devastatingly handsome in the way a storm is beautiful, from a distance. Everyone's eyes dropped to their plates as he passed. The silence was suffocating. He sat at table 7, his back to the wall, eyes scanning the room like a predator. His men took positions at nearby tables. Maria brought him a scotch without being asked, set it down, and retreated without a word. Emma tried to focus on her other tables, but she couldn't help glancing at him. There was something profoundly sad beneath all that danger. She recognized it because she wore the same mask every day, the one that said, "I'm fine," when everything inside was breaking. 2 hours passed. Dante sat alone, barely touching his food, speaking only to his men in low tones. The restaurant began to empty. That's when Emma heard it, a phone ringing at table 7. Not Dante's phone. One of his men fumbled with his jacket, embarrassed, trying to silence it. But the damage was done. Dante's jaw tightened. "Out," he said quietly. The single word carried enough menace to make the man pale. "All of you. Wait in the cars." The men left immediately. Now Dante sat completely alone, staring at nothing, his untouched osso buco cooling on the plate. Emma watched him from across the room, and her heart did something stupid. It ached for him. She saw past the expensive suit and the reputation. She saw a man imprisoned by grief, exactly like she'd been after Lucas's father abandoned them. Maria grabbed her arm. "Don't even think about it." But Emma was already moving. She walked to table 7, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might break through her ribs. When she reached his table, Dante's eyes lifted to hers, and the coldness in them should have frozen her in place. "I didn't call you over," he said quietly. His voice was smooth, cultured, but edged with warning. "I know," Emma replied, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. "But you've been sitting here for 2 hours barely eating, and that osso buco is Maria's specialty. She'll be heartbroken if you don't at least try it." Something flickered in those gray eyes. Confusion, maybe. Or irritation. "I don't care about Maria's feelings." "No," Emma agreed, "but you care about respect. And disrespecting someone's work, especially when they put their heart into it, that's beneath a man like you." The entire restaurant held its breath. Maria's face went white. The chef peered through the kitchen window, ready to call 911. Dante stared at her for a long moment. She could feel him analyzing her, deciding if she was brave or just stupid. Then he did something unexpected. He picked up his fork and took a bite. His expression remained neutral, but he took another bite. Then another. "Satisfied?" he asked, his tone unreadable. "Are you?" Emma countered. The corner of his mouth twitched. Just barely. Almost imperceptibly. But Emma saw it, and her breath caught. "What's your name?" he asked. "Emma. Emma Sullivan. You're new. Third shift. You need this job." It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. "Yes." He set down his fork and reached into his jacket. Emma's heart stopped, but he only pulled out his wallet. He placed $500 bills on the table. "The food was adequate," he said, standing. He was taller than she'd realized, his presence overwhelming in its intensity. The conversation was unexpected. He walked toward the exit, his footsteps echoing in the silent restaurant. But at the door, he paused and turned back. "Emma Sullivan," he said, and the way he said her name made her shiver. "I'll see you next Thursday." It wasn't a question. It was a promise. After he left, Emma's legs finally gave out. She sank into the nearest chair, her whole body shaking. Maria rushed over, her face torn between terror and awe. "Do you have any idea what you just did?" Emma looked at the $500 on the table, enough to cover Lucas's medication for the month. "I talked to him like he was human," she whispered. Thursday came again, and Emma's stomach was a knot of nerves all day. She'd spent the week convincing herself that last Thursday had been a fluke, that Dante Moretti wouldn't return, that she'd imagined the almost smile. But at 9 p.m. sharp, the temperature dropped, and he walked through the door. This time, when he sat at table 7, his eyes found her immediately across the room. Maria started to move, but Dante raised one finger, not at Maria, but pointing directly at Emma. "He wants you," Maria hissed. "God help you." Emma's hands trembled as she approached his table, but she lifted her chin and met his gaze. "Good evening, Mr. Moretti." "Dante," he corrected. "And sit." I can't. I'm working." He pulled out the chair across from him. "Sit. Emma. I own this restaurant. You're working." She sat, her heart racing. Up close, she could see the fine lines around his eyes, the tiredness he couldn't quite hide. He was even more handsome than she'd remembered, and that made him even more dangerous. "Why did you approach me last week?" he asked directly. Emma considered lying, then decided against it. Something told her he'd know. "Because you looked lonely. And sad. And I know what that feels like." His jaw tightened. "You know nothing about me. I know you lost someone 7 years ago. I know you haven't smiled since. And I know that everyone in this room treats you like a monster, but monsters don't sit alone in restaurants staring at pictures on their phones when they think no one's watching." Dante's hand, which had been resting on the table, curled into a fist. For a moment, Emma thought she'd gone too far. Then he pulled out his phone and turned it toward her. The wallpaper was a photo of a little girl with dark curls and his gray eyes, laughing as she held a dandelion. Gianna, he said quietly. She was 5. Emma's eyes filled with tears. She was beautiful. She was everything. His voice was raw, stripped of all the cold power. A rival family planted a bomb in my car. She wanted to play with the buttons. I couldn't tell her no. I never could. I'm so sorry, Emma whispered. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring her back. He took the phone back, his walls rebuilding. But you're right. I haven't smiled in 7 years. I don't deserve to. That's where you're wrong, Emma said firmly. She wouldn't want you to stop living. Dante's eyes snapped to hers, sharp with anger, but beneath it, something desperate. You don't know what she'd want. I'm a mother, Emma said quietly. I have a 6-year-old son, Lucas. And if something happened to me, I'd want him to find joy again. I'd want him to smile when he remembered me, not drown in guilt for surviving. The anger in Dante's eyes transformed into something else, curiosity, maybe even respect. Tell me about Lucas, he said. For the next hour, while the restaurant continued around them and his men watched from the corners, Emma told him about her son. About Lucas's love for dinosaurs, his gap-toothed smile, his bravery during his treatments. She didn't mean to mention the medical bills, but somehow it slipped out. Dante's expression hardened. What's wrong with him? Leukemia. He's been in remission for 6 months, but the bills. She shook her head. I'm sorry. You don't need to hear about my problems. I asked, Dante said simply. He stood, signaling the end of their conversation. But before he left, he placed something in her hand, a business card with only a phone number. If Lucas needs anything, you call this number. I can't accept. You can. You will. His tone left no room for argument. Then his voice softened slightly. Same time next Thursday, Emma. As he walked away, one of his men approached her. He placed an envelope on the table. Inside were $2,000 and a note in sharp handwriting. For Lucas's medication. Not charity. Payment for your time. You're the first person in 7 years to see me instead of my reputation. That's worth more than money. D. Emma pressed the envelope to her chest, tears streaming down her face. Maria appeared beside her, eyes wide. Emma, you need to be careful. Men like Dante Moretti don't just have conversations. They own things. People. And once you're in their world. I know, Emma whispered. But as she looked at the money that would save her son's life, she realized she was already in too deep. The Thursdays became a ritual. Every week at 9 p.m., Dante arrived and requested Emma. They'd sit at table 7 and slowly, so slowly, the ice around him began to crack. He asked about Lucas constantly. Wanted to know about his latest dinosaur facts, his favorite foods, how the treatments were going. Emma realized he was living vicariously through her stories, remembering what it was like to love a child. In the 4th week, something changed. Emma arrived for her shift to find the restaurant in chaos. Maria pulled her aside immediately. Mr. Moretti called ahead. He's bringing someone tonight. A woman. First time in 7 years. Emma's stomach dropped. Of course he had someone. A man like Dante Moretti wouldn't stay alone forever. The foolish flutter she'd felt each Thursday, the way her heart raced when he smiled at her stories, that had been naive. At 9 p.m., Dante arrived. But he wasn't with a woman. He was with a little boy. Emma's breath caught as she watched them approach table 7. The boy was maybe 7, with dark hair and wary eyes. He clutched Dante's hand like a lifeline. When Dante's eyes found Emma across the room, something in his expression made her heart stop. Vulnerability. Raw, aching vulnerability. She approached the table on shaking legs. Emma, Dante said quietly. "This is Marco, my nephew. His parents, my sister and her husband, they died in a car accident 3 days ago. I'm his guardian now." Emma's eyes filled with tears. She looked at the little boy who was trying so hard to be brave, just like Lucas did during his treatments. "Hi, Marco. I'm Emma." Marco didn't respond, just pressed closer to Dante. "He hasn't spoken since it happened," Dante said, and Emma heard the helplessness in his voice. This powerful, dangerous man had no idea how to comfort a grieving child. Emma made a decision. "Marco, do you like dinosaurs?" The boy's eyes flickered with interest. "My son, Lucas, he's the biggest dinosaur expert I know. He's 6, and he has every dinosaur fact memorized. His favorite is the Spinosaurus because it could swim." She pulled out her phone and showed him a picture of Lucas grinning next to his plastic dinosaur collection. "See? That's Lucas with his collection." Marco leaned forward, really looking at the picture. "I bet Lucas would love to meet another dinosaur fan," Emma continued. "And I bet he'd want to show you his collection. Would you like that?" Marco looked up at Dante, a question in his eyes. Dante's throat worked with emotion. He looked at Emma, and in his eyes was something she'd never seen before: gratitude, wonder, and something deeper. Something dangerous. "Would that be okay?" he asked Emma, his voice rough. "I know I'm asking a lot." "Yes," Emma said immediately. "Lucas would love it. And you look like you could use a friend who understands." That night, Dante didn't eat. He just watched Emma interact with Marco, showing him pictures, telling him gentle stories, making him feel safe. And when Marco finally smiled, a tiny, broken smile, but a smile nonetheless, Dante's hand reached across the table and covered Emma's. "Thank you," he whispered. His touch sent electricity through her entire body. She looked up and found him staring at her with an intensity that stole her breath. The air between them thickened, charged with something neither of them could name. "Dante," she whispered. "I know," he said. "I know this is impossible. I know what I am, what my world is. But Emma, you've brought me back to life. Slowly, carefully. And I can't," he stopped, jaw clenched. "I don't want to stop seeing you." "I don't want you to stop either," she admitted. His thumb traced circles on her hand. "My world is dangerous. If people knew you mattered to me." "I'm not afraid. You should be." "I am." His gray eyes bore into hers. "I'm terrified because I haven't felt anything in 7 years, and now I feel everything. And it all centers around you." Emma's heart hammered against her ribs. "What are we doing?" "Something reckless," Dante said. "Something I swore I'd never do again." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressing a kiss to her knuckles that seared through her. "But I can't seem to stop." The restaurant faded away. There was only Dante, his touch, his eyes full of dangerous promise. Marco tugged on Dante's sleeve. "Uncle Dante? Can we see Lucas?" Dante's expression softened, and there it was. The thing Emma had been working toward for weeks. He smiled. It was small, tentative, like he'd forgotten how. But it was real. And it transformed his entire face from dangerous to devastating. "Yes, Marco," he said. "We can see Lucas." Then his eyes returned to Emma, and that smile deepened. "Next Thursday." "Next Thursday," Emma agreed, knowing that everything had just changed between them. As she watched him leave with Marco, Maria appeared beside her. "Emma, you're playing with fire." "I know," Emma whispered. But when she looked at her hand, where she could still feel the warmth of his lips, she realized she didn't care about the burn. The meeting between Lucas and Marco happened at a children's museum the following Sunday. Dante had rented the entire place for the afternoon, a casual display of power that reminded Emma exactly who she was getting involved with. But watching him with the boys, seeing him crouch down to examine a T-Rex skeleton while Lucas excitedly explained the difference between carnivores and herbivores, Emma's heart melted. Marco was slowly opening up, and Lucas, with the innate kindness of children who'd suffered, treated him like a brother. "Your son is remarkable," Dante said quietly as they watched the boys play in the fossil dig area. "Takes after his mother," Emma replied with a small smile. Dante turned to her, and the look in his eyes made her breath catch. "Yes, he does." They were standing too close. She could smell his cologne, expensive, masculine, intoxicating. His hand lifted, fingers gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. The touch was tender, reverent. "Emma," he murmured, "I need to tell you something." But before he could continue, his phone buzzed. His expression changed instantly, from tender to lethal. He read the message, and his jaw clenched. "What's wrong?" Emma asked. "Nothing you need to worry about." But his eyes told a different story. "I need to go. Marco stays with you. My men will be outside." "Dante, don't argue. Please." He cupped her face in his hands, and the desperation in his touch frightened her. "Promise me you'll stay here until I call you." "Promise me." "I promise." He kissed her forehead, a brief, burning promise, and left. 3 hours later, Emma's phone rang. It was a number she didn't recognize. "Ms. Sullivan? This is Vincent, Mr. Moretti's head of security. Sir needs you to take the boys to this address." He rattled off a location in the wealthy North Shore suburbs. "Don't stop anywhere. Follow my car directly." "Understood." Fear clawed at her throat. "What happened?" "Just follow protocol, ma'am. For your safety and the boys." The address turned out to be a mansion. No, an estate. Massive iron gates opened automatically, and armed men lined the driveway. Emma's old Honda looked absurdly out of place between the SUVs and luxury cars. A woman in her 50s met them at the door. "Ms. Sullivan? I'm Rosa, the housekeeper. Mr. Moretti asked me to get the boys settled. He'll be home soon." "Home?" Emma repeated. "This is his home?" Rosa smiled kindly. "One of them. Please come in. You're safe here." The interior was breathtaking. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that probably cost more than Emma would make in her lifetime. But it felt empty. Cold. Like a museum, not a home. Rosa took the boys to a massive playroom that looked like a toy store exploded. Emma was led to a library where floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked Lake Michigan. She waited for 2 hours, her anxiety building with each minute. Finally, the front door opened. She heard Dante's voice, sharp, commanding, speaking rapid Italian to his men. Then footsteps approaching the library. When he appeared in the doorway, Emma gasped. His knuckles were bloody. There was a cut on his cheekbone. His suit jacket was gone, his white shirt partially unbuttoned and streaked with. Was that blood? "Are you hurt?" she demanded, rushing to him. "It's not my blood," he said flatly. Then his hands were on her face, searching her eyes frantically. "Are you okay?" "Marco." "Lucas." "We're fine." "What happened?" Dante's jaw clenched. "One of my rivals found out about you. About the Thursdays. They were planning to use you to get to me." His thumb traced her cheekbone, and his eyes were dark with rage. "They were going to take you. Hurt you. Use you." Emma's blood ran cold. "But they didn't because I have eyes everywhere. And because I made it very clear what happens to anyone who threatens what's mine." The possessiveness in his tone should have frightened her. Instead, it made her knees weak. "What's mine?" she repeated. "Is that what I am?" "Yes." No hesitation. His forehead pressed against hers. From the moment you walked to my table and refused to be afraid. From the moment you made me remember how to feel. You're mine, Emma. And I protect what's mine. This is crazy, she whispered. We barely know each other. It's been weeks. Doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter. You've seen me. Really seen me. Not the monster, not the boss. Me, Dante. The man who died 7 years ago, and somehow you brought him back to life. His lips hovered over hers, so close she could feel his breath. Tell me to leave you alone. Tell me this is too dangerous, too fast, too much. Tell me to walk away. Emma's hands fisted in his shirt. I can't. Why not? Because I see you too. And I don't want to lose that. Dante kissed her then, deep, desperate, devastating. 7 years of grief and loneliness poured into that kiss. Emma kissed him back with equal fervor, her fingers tangling in his hair, pulling him closer. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against hers. You can't go home, he said. You and Lucas. You're staying here. Under my protection. Non-negotiable. Dante, I can't just move into your house. Yes, you can. Because the alternative is you and Lucas becoming targets. His voice was firm, but she heard the fear beneath it. I can't lose you. I won't. Not when I just found you. Emma looked into his eyes and saw the truth. This wasn't about control. This was about a man who'd lost everything once and couldn't survive losing it again. Okay, she whispered. We'll stay. Relief flooded his features. He pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. I swear on Gianna's memory, he murmured into her hair. Nothing will hurt you. Nothing will take you from me. But as Emma held him, feeling his heart race against hers, she couldn't shake the feeling that the real danger hadn't even arrived yet. Living in Dante's world was like living in a beautiful cage. Emma and Lucas had an entire wing of the mansion. Lucas loved it, the pool, the game room, having Marco as a constant playmate. But Emma felt the weight of the guards, the locked gates, the constant vigilance. 2 weeks after moving in, everything shattered. Emma woke at 3 a.m. to silence, the kind of heavy silence that meant something was wrong. She checked Lucas's room. Empty. Marco's room. Also empty. Panic seized her throat. She ran downstairs, her bare feet silent on the marble. In the living room, she found them. Dante sitting on the floor with both boys asleep against him, an old photo album open on his lap. He was staring at a picture of Gianna, tears streaming silently down his face. Dante, Emma whispered. His head lifted, and the devastation in his eyes broke her heart. I failed her. I let her die. And now I have Marco and Lucas and you, and I can't fail again. But what if I do? What if my world destroys everyone I love? Emma knelt beside him, gently moving the sleeping boys to the couch. Then she took his face in her hands. Listen to me. Gianna's death wasn't your fault. You didn't plant that bomb. Evil people did. And yes, your world is dangerous. But you know what? So is mine. Lucas almost died from leukemia. Any day it could come back. Loving anyone means risking loss. But the alternative, not loving, not living, that's not life. That's just survival. I don't know how to do this, Dante admitted, his voice breaking. I don't know how to be what you need. What they need. You learn. We both do. Together. She kissed him softly. You're not alone anymore. Dante pulled her into his arms, and for long minutes they just held each other while the boys slept peacefully nearby, a makeshift family born from tragedy and transformed by love. Then his phone rang. Dante's expression changed instantly. He answered, listened, and every trace of vulnerability vanished, replaced by cold fury. When? Pause. How many? Pause. I'm on my way. He stood, and Emma saw the transformation. From the broken man she'd been comforting to the Mafia boss who ruled Chicago with an iron fist. Stay here, he commanded. Don't leave this house. My men will guard you. What's happening? The rival family, the one that threatened you, they just attacked one of my warehouses. 3 of my men are dead. His eyes were ice. This is a declaration of war. And they just made a fatal mistake. Dante, please be careful. He cupped her face in his hands. I love you, Emma. I should have said it before. But I love you. You and Lucas. You've given me a reason to live again. And I'll burn this entire city down before I let anyone take that from me. He kissed her, fierce, possessive, desperate, and then he was gone. Emma spent the next 6 hours in agony. Rosa tried to distract her, but every minute felt like an hour. She kept the boys entertained, but inside she was dying. Finally, at 9 a.m., Dante returned. He looked like he'd walked through hell. Blood on his clothes, definitely not his this time. His knuckles were torn. But his eyes, when they found hers, were calm. It's over, he said simply. The threat is gone. You're safe. Emma ran to him, not caring about the blood or the danger or anything except that he was alive. He caught her, lifting her off her feet, burying his face in her neck. Don't ever scare me like that again, she sobbed. Can't promise that, he murmured. But I can promise I'll always come back to you. Lucas appeared in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. Mom? Mr. Dante? What's wrong? Dante set Emma down and knelt to Lucas's level. Nothing's wrong, buddy. Everything's going to be okay now. Lucas studied him with those 2 wise eyes. You love my mom, don't you? Dante glanced at Emma, then back at Lucas. Yes, I do. Very much. Is that okay with you? Lucas threw his arms around Dante's neck. You make her smile. She hasn't smiled like that since forever. So yeah, it's okay. Dante's eyes closed, and Emma saw tears leak from beneath his lashes. He hugged Lucas back, this fierce, dangerous man transformed by a child's acceptance. When he finally stood, he looked at Emma with everything laid bare in his eyes. Marry me, he said. Emma's breath stopped. What? Marry me. I know it's fast. I know it's insane. But I've learned that life is too short and too fragile to waste time. You've saved me, Emma. You and Lucas. You've taught me how to smile again, how to hope again, how to love again. Marry me. Let me spend the rest of my life protecting you, loving you, giving you the life you deserve. Emma looked at this impossible man, this dangerous, powerful, broken, beautiful man who'd somehow become her everything. Yes, she whispered. Yes, I'll marry you. Dante pulled her into his arms and kissed her as the morning sun flooded through the windows, washing away the darkness of the night before. Behind them, Lucas and Marco started cheering. And for the first time in 7 years, Dante Moretti threw his head back and laughed, a full, genuine, joyful sound that filled the empty mansion and turned it into a home. 3 years later, Emma stood on the terrace of their home overlooking Lake Michigan, watching Dante teach Lucas and Marco how to sail. Lucas, now 9 and in full remission, was shouting excitedly about the wind direction. Marco, 10, listened intently to Dante's every word. A small hand tugged on her dress. Emma looked down at the little girl with dark curls and gray eyes, Gianna, named for the sister Dante lost, born 18 months ago and loved beyond measure. Mama, when can I go on the boat? Emma scooped her up. When you're bigger, baby. That's what Papa always says. Emma smiled. Dante had fought so hard against having another child, terrified of losing again. But when Emma got pregnant, something had shifted in him. The birth had been the most terrified she'd ever seen him, but also the most joyful. He'd held baby Gianna and wept, whispering to her about her namesake, promising to be the father both his daughters deserved. The boat approached the dock, and Emma watched her husband, guided in with practiced ease. He'd changed so much. The ice had melted. The smiles came easily now. He was still dangerous, still powerful, still the boss of Chicago's underworld. But he was also a father, a husband, a man who'd learned to live again. Dante jumped onto the dock and looked up at her. Even after 3 years, the sight of him still stole her breath. And when he smiled, that full, genuine smile, her heart raced just like it had that first Thursday night. He climbed the terrace steps and pulled her into his arms, Gianna squealing with delight between them. "What are you thinking about?" he murmured against her hair. "How a struggling waitress somehow ended up here." "You didn't end up here. You saved a dying man. And he spent the rest of his life trying to be worthy of that gift." Emma pulled back to look at him. "You were always worthy, Dante. You just needed someone to remind you." He kissed her, soft, sweet, full of promise. "Best Thursday night of my life." "Mine too," Emma agreed. And as the sun set over Lake Michigan, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, the Moretti family went inside together. This impossible family built on tragedy, forged in danger, and sealed with the kind of love that only comes from truly seeing another person's soul. Dante Moretti had been dead for 7 years. But a kind, brave waitress had brought him back to life. And he smiled every single day for the rest of theirs. This story has reached its end. If it touched your heart in any way, leave your like and share it with someone who also enjoys powerful, emotional stories. New stories arrive soon. Until next time.